the same time that they want to lift all the limits on the voucher program, which the DPI demonstrated with the report is not doing what they wanted it to do, which was in competition to create a marketplace in public education, and that public schools would rise. And public schools have been continuing to work in increasingly difficult circumstances, but those voucher school children are not performing because they don't have the same high level of instruction and meet the same standards that we do in our public school. And we're beginning to see not only disingenuousness, but these are false economies. There's no democracy without a citizenry, and the public and public education isn't just about who's paying. It's about creating an engaged citizenry. So then we go back to the thought about those Koch brothers and all of those people who have been so interested in what we're doing in the state of Wisconsin and willing to underwrite a lot of this chaos, because it's not in their best interest to have an engaged citizenry, right?
No, absolutely.
It's not in their best interest. And I was trying to explain to a newspaper editor in Milwaukee, and I said, private schools and public schools are not coincidental in their mission, because a public school must create an informed citizenry for there to be public issues and public safety and public resources and all of these things. So we have the cuts to public education. We have things like almost cutting in half the earned income tax credit. This is a Republican and Democratic move, started at the federal level, boosted in Wisconsin because it's so effective at helping us move people out of poverty. It is entirely work-related. You only get it when you're at work. You know, it's been one of our smartest, most effective strategies. Why would you cut that? As the numbers of people are growing in poverty, and this is one of the ways that they will need access to other supports at a lower level. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. We talk about the cuts to education, and I want to point out something that I begged the newspaper to cover and haven't seen it yet. Right before all of this chaos, there was a little note in the paper that the Department of Administration turned back a $23 million grant to increase access to high-speed internet, to broadband access in schools and in libraries. Now we'll go back to some of the things that are essential to a democracy and access to opportunity, and high-speed broadband is one of those. Now, I used to have the numbers on the tip of my tongue, but I will tell you that the percentage of school buildings and libraries, public libraries in this state, that don't have access to broadband would make you think we were in the heart of Appalachia in the worst of ways. It was well over 60%, and one of them was higher than that. Oh my God. So we're cutting the schools, and many of them are cutting or shutting down libraries even. And we turn away federal money for broadband access. Now, you know what? Because in the 90s, the state of Wisconsin, with providing those telecommunications, went into a public-private partnership with AT&T. And AT&T doesn't like the terms of the government requirements to accepting this money. So we're back to who doesn't want you to have access to information and to opportunity. We turned back the rail money. Women's health care, I just don't even get me started. And these are, again, false economies. We all know it's not good. Health care, there isn't a doctor who would argue it, and it's terrible use of money if a woman were to have 12 to 18 pregnancies, right? Which is what you'd have without access to contraception. And so to cut back on a woman's access to medical care, to reproductive health care, which is the core of our body and defining for our lives, is just crazy. These are false economies. But they aren't just these. Republicans aren't just attacking our policies and dismantling important parts of government. And this is what worries me so much and why the recall elections are so important, because a lot of damage can be done in a year. And a lot of things that it would be very difficult to see how we bring them back. I would be remiss not to say that part of the governor's proposal is to cut the Wisconsin Arts Board by 73%. Now, the Wisconsin Arts Board is 0.013, so it's 13 1,000ths of 1% of the state budget. It has played an increasingly important role in our administration in job creation and economic development. The governor is leaving enough money in to pull down a little bit of money from the NEA, which of course, on the federal level, the Republicans are working on killing that with NPR and the National Endowment for the Arts. So there's no real assurance that that's going to be coming anyway. But he's shutting it down as a citizen board-led agency, which has brought tremendous resources to this state. Green Bay's Archetype founder Paul Meinke sits on the board. I can't tell you how much free or pro bono work that Archetype has done for the state of Wisconsin that has benefited people and communities all across the state. We have been all about creative community development and workforce development. The Department of Tourism markets the state. The governor took the little bit that is left theoretically from our budget so that he can pull down NEA money, and he now has it listed under the Department of Marketing for the Tourism. We work together well, but what we do is not redundant. And this is, again, a false economy, because if we don't continue to keep strong the cultural infrastructure of a community, if there's no theater, no dance, no music for your children, no that kind of development of the creative capacities that develop innovators and entrepreneurs, it's the same thing as saying, we'd let the roads and the bridges collapse in this community. We wouldn't do that, because the state provides a certain infrastructure for the possibility of commerce to be established and to grow. This is part of it. It's what animates a community. And it also employs people and has a direct economic impact. And we also pay sales tax on the tickets. So it's a false economy. So they are not just attacking policies, but they're attacking the very fundamentals of what it means to be a Democrat. They're even attacking our right to talk about our differences. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but a professor from the University of Wisconsin-Madison wrote an article, an op-ed piece printed in the New York Times that was critical of Governor Walker. And the Republican Party has, under the Freedom of Information Act, has made an open records request for a professor's emails. This is unbelievable that there is no academic freedom respected by them. And I would also add that the newspaper in Madison, the Wisconsin State Journal, didn't cover it. It was covered all around the state, and in New York, and they didn't cover it until finally somebody insisted on placing an editorial in that paper so that they would have to cover it. So I want to go back to, we know what it is to be Democrats. We know that we have to have a public education system. There's a new article that was in the last edition of the Harvard Business Review by Michael Porter, who's been a long-heralded business guru. And the title of his article was Creating Shared Value. How do we invent capitalism and unleash a wave of innovation and growth? What he's talking about in language that is easy to understand in the business community is what we've been talking about in the Democratic Party for a long time. It's being fiscally responsible, but it is understanding that, for instance, if you're going to pollute You have to carry the environmental degradation on your balance sheet. We have to account for these things because they have an impact on your profits in the long term. And we